Thank you, Celia, so much. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, amazing. So, hi, everybody. Again, congratulations, you made it. It is 5:08. I'm American, so the 17 throws me off every time. But I'm so excited to talk to you about this. So this talk is Scaling Activism Through Gameplay, an international peacebuilder's journey to game design. So in order to make this not 3 days long, I've broken it into 3 sections. And so I should have called them acts. I don't know where Tom is, but that was really great. So first act, after I talk a little bit about my story, I'm gonna talk to you about how I train young activists and movement leaders all over the world. I'm gonna give you that training so you can go out and change everything. And then after that, we'll go into how we applied that into our game and platform, World Reborn. And then the third is the actual impact that we saw from it. So again, hi, I'm Jess, CEO, co-founder of Wicked Saint Studios. And what we have built is actually a real-world activation platform with the experience of a story game. So you get to play a little every day, you choose your path, we're a choice-based game, you find your power, and then together we unfunk the world. And sometimes we have little asterisks there when we're feeling a little sassy. But what I'll start with first is like how did we get here? So I'll talk a little bit about the game. As you might be able to see a little bit, it's a choice-based game. We have real-world quests. We feature real-world creators in it, and so we're going to talk about that. But first, we're going to talk about my story. So the journey has been interesting. So let's see, how far back should I start? So let's start with my mom. So my mom, first of all, my mom is actually the hardcore gamer in the family, ironically. Yes. I was the book nerd, and she had PlayStation and Xbox in 2 different rooms of the house playing all the time. And so my story really starts with my mom, because my mom was the blonde prom queen sports star that came from a small town, went to college, and got pregnant with me, a black baby. And then moved back to said small town to raise said black baby. And so I knew what it was like being different from a very young age. I was not only the only black person in my school, I was the only black person in my family, which is really interesting. So it took a second for me to figure out that being different wasn't a bad thing. It's actually this thing to be celebrated. And one of the things that I love to do was get experiences through stories. And so I read lots of books. I love true stories. I love fictional ones. And so I thought stories would change the world, so I went to school for journalism. And I got my degree in print journalism in 2010, right when they said print was dead. And so I went right into TV, actually. So I got my first job at my local television station in my small hometown of Medford, Oregon. Oregon is the state right above California, I know. And I'm telling you, I thought I was going to go to New York, I thought I was going to go to San Fran, and here I was back in Medford, Oregon. And it was great because they put me in charge of all the awareness campaigns. So anti-child abuse, anti-domestic abuse, anti-sexual abuse. So I was telling stories, but I was telling stories of terrible things after they happened. And I was like, man, there has to be a way to stop bad things before they happen. Also, I was raising a lot of awareness, and awareness is really powerful, but I was also like, how do we get to that next level? How do we actually activate people to do the thing in real life? And so I won a few awards. That was my ticket to Washington, D.C., where I started working for Search for Common Ground. So Search for Common Ground is the world's largest dedicated peacebuilding organization, with offices in 35 countries all over the world, with most of the staff local to the areas that they're working in. And so Search does this really cool thing where wherever it is in the world, that office is usually made up of the groups of people that are in conflict in that country, right? Whatever, religiously, ethnically, whatever it is. And they're local to that area. And they tackle everything from reconciliation after genocide, prevention of mass atrocities, countering violent extremism. And it was there that I found how do you stop bad things before they happen. And it was through this type of peace building that's called conflict transformation. And so, first of all, I have to set the record straight, because there's a lot of, I mean, if I just said like peace, what comes to mind when I say peace or peace builder? Different things come to different people's minds, often depending on where you are in the world. If I was in the US and I said peace builder, like people say like, I think of like the images that come to mind are like hippies and, you know, like, and I have to admit, I have been part of one drum circle. Okay, two. I've been part of 2 drum circles, but actually peace is really pragmatic. And so first I'm gonna tell you what peace is not. So peace is not quiet. Peace is not the absence of voices or opinions. It is not ignoring grievances, concerns, or injustices. It is not passive. It is not weak. And it actually isn't even the absence of conflict. So conflict is an indicator that there's a problem, but it's also an opportunity to fix that problem, depending on how you handle it. And so I like to think of it as build. So when we talk about conflict transformation, I like jamming with it. Conflict transformation, think of build. It is an opportunity to fix whatever the problem is. And so we believe that our inability to deal with difference stops us from making progress on every issue we face. So think about something that you're passionate about. Whether it's the environment and the planet, poverty, equality, violence, hunger, whatever it is, we have to collaboratively problem solve in order to solve that issue. And often, we need the very people that we think are part of the problem or our opponents in order to make sustainable change. Otherwise, what happens is the pendulum just swings to whoever's in power. And so sometimes we'll get progress, and we're like, progress! And then someone else yanks the power lever, whoosh, and it swings all the way back. And we're like, oh, that didn't stick. So the only way to make it stick and sustainable is to get all co-creators and stakeholders involved to co-create the solution together that fixes the problems and doesn't cause other problems for others. And so it's really what I like to say is it's basically what we say is we get people to focus on their shared interests and their common goals instead of their separate positions. And so we always say principles over sides. Okay, so I learned about this approach and I was like, this is awesome. This is amazing. Why aren't we all doing and talking about this? Like, how many books and movies, like we all know the art of war. We don't know this art, like we don't know how to do this. Like, how do we scale this, give everybody these tools, make this really popular so people don't think just peace building is this like kumbaya thing. It's this like real pragmatic solution to all of the problems that we face. I was like, this must be a story and branding problem because was what I was hired to do. So Search originally brought me on to do marketing, but I needed better stories from the field. So I started training my local colleagues, and then pretty soon they started writing me into their programs, and I started traveling out to these awesome places. So Burundi, Nigeria, Colombia, Myanmar, Kyrgyzstan, Armenia, working with young movement leaders and activists and training them. So we see this here. Nope, we don't, because I went back. This is me, and then this is my co-founder, who is my other half, Alicia. And so she's a behavioral science researcher. And so she also did this work in the humanitarian sector. We both come from this space, but then everyone else on our team is from the games industry, entertainment industry. And so I trained young activists and movement leaders on 2 big things. So one is what I called the tattoo method, which is basically social change communication. And it's based, and I'll get into it in a second. And the second thing was common ground activism, which we're gonna get into too. But first, social change communication. So that's basically strategic messaging, experiences, and activities and storytelling that shifts attitudes and behavior. And it's kind of close to like marketing. Like we're gonna see like a campaign that's done for like a social campaign where we're trying to like get people to change their mind about seals. I don't know why I just thought of seals. Whatever. Like, protect the seals, right? Like, it's about something, and we want you to change your behavior around it. And so it could look like marketing, but I think it's different than marketing. And so I have this whole little analogy that I like to call the tattoo method, and it's a framework that I developed over working with a lot of different activists over time. And I like to think of it as this. So when a lot of us know marketing a little bit, and so in marketing, the people at the top, the executives, decide what their promise is to their customer, and then you consistently sell that promise, whatever that is. So I want you guys to imagine for a moment that you're at home. I don't know if this happens in yours. Do people knock on your door and try to sell you stuff? Does that happen a little bit? On the street, does it happen? Are you like walking and people try to like stop you to like, no? Okay, maybe I should come out. This happens in the US all the time. So I'm sitting there, just imagine that you're anywhere. You're doing whatever you want to do, and someone interrupts your day, and they're like, I want to sell you something. What's the feeling that you get in that moment when someone's like, I want to sell you something? Your guard goes up, right? You're like, ooh, well, am I immediately like, I'm gonna trust this person with my firstborn child? No, like you don't trust that, right? And the problem is that with any kind of social change, whether it's in society or even between relationships and people, trust is key. And so instead of it like branding being a top-down thing, it's like a physical brand, where those at the top decide and promise and like sell down. I think that social change communication should be much more like tattooing, where someone sees something they identify with and claim it as their own. Because someone says, hey, look at my tattoo, right? Most people didn't draw their own tattoo, but it's theirs. They belong, even like when the character's on it, look at my Tweety bird. It's theirs. And this is the kind of content that we want to create. We want to make characters and stories and even words that our community and our audiences take on as their own. So then you start hearing them using these phrases. That's when you know it's like you like really nailed it, right? Is when people are repeating the phrase like it's theirs. That's that sense of ownership. So it goes from this very kind of like vertical top-down thing to this horizontal thing that you adopt. Okay. So tattoo method has a couple principles. Yes, we're called Wicked Saints. I don't know if you noticed that little emoji cuteness there. But there's two main principles for the tattoo method. And one is that you're just ruthless pursuit of the goal. All the time. Like you have it in mind, you're going through your objective all the time. Doesn't matter, like the only other rule is that you don't do harm. But anything else where it's like, okay, this is the way things are done, don't worry about it. Rule is we're trying to end racism. We're trying to whatever your goal is, like you hold that, and that if that means that I work with different types of people that maybe like, oh, you shouldn't talk to them. If working with these people are gonna help me get to my goal, we're going for it. And so the first is just really have this idea of your goal, and you like live and breathe your goal, and you understand all the angles of it, which we'll get to in a second. And the second part is that it's all about the audience. Not you, not me. It's all about whoever the audience is that you're talking to. So it doesn't matter what you care about, how you would explain it, what you like, how you feel. All that matters is what the audience cares about, how they talk about it, how they feel. So it's very, very centered, very audience-centered, and there's a lot of different techniques we use to actually get in the audience's shoes. One of the tools that I like to use for the tattoo method is thinking about it, call this the hero journey, and really breaking down your objective to see like, okay, we talk about know, think, feel, and do. So what does your audience currently know? That means what information do they have about whatever your topic is? It could be wrong information. It could be misinformation too. It could be a lack of information. But like, what do they know? What information do they have? What do they think? What is their opinion about whatever the topic is? Are they think it's important? Do they think it's not? They think it's lame? Is it cool? Like, what is their opinion about it? Think, feel. What emotions do they have? around whatever it is, and do. What are they currently doing? And then, so you list that out, so you think through. So what this helps you do is basically manifest how the goal plays out in real life for your audience. So what does my audience currently know, think, feel, and do about whatever the thing is? And what do I need them to know, think, feel, and do in order to achieve our goal? So if they currently, maybe they currently feel really apathetic around climate change, I need them to feel passionate or excited, or maybe they feel helpless, we're gonna get into stages of change, but what do I need them to do? So what this helps you do, again, is it helps you think through how does this manifest for your audience, and what does success look like? So what is the current status? What does success look like? How does this manifest for your audience? And then, as you can imagine, this is also helpful in design. So our team also does this in design. When coming into our game, okay, what is the current knowledge they have, information they have coming into a game, a weird game like ours? Are they coming with misinformation or perceptions about it? Are they coming in with opinions, or they think an impact game is gonna be lame or boring? Are they what do they currently feel in our onboarding? What do we need them to feel? So as you can imagine, this is really helpful in just design in general. And so you list out where you currently know, think, feel, and do. What do you need them to know, think, feel, and do? And then you think, what experience can I give them that would help bridge this gap? And you go through each one. So experiences, it could also be information, could be resources, it could be a lot of other things. And then you help, and this is kind of a little bit of a hero journey that again helps you. It's just a creative tool to help you think, being really centered on what your goal is and how it manifests for your people. Awesome. Okay, so that one was a little bit more focused on the goal, but as you can tell, audience is really important. And then the next stage is really, or the next part of the tattoo method is really understanding the transformational stages of change and where your audience is. So there's 5 different stages. There's denial. It's not a problem. There is no climate change. Not a problem. Helpless. Well, okay, but there's nothing I can do about it. There's interested. Okay, maybe. Committed. Let's do it. I'm on it. And then maintenance. I'm going to keep doing it. So the trick here is that people usually only make one step change at a time. So, and it's really important to know where your audience is, because if you don't know where they are in these stages of change, you're not actually talking to them. So a lot of times we communicate from our understanding. Well, I believe this, and this is how we communicate. If that person isn't there, you might as well be talking to someone in another room. Just imagine, you would start a conversation differently with someone that doesn't believe climate change is a real thing, compared to somebody that doesn't think that they can do anything about it, versus someone who hasn't taken that step to get committed about it. And a lot of times we talk to people who are in denial like they are already committed, or we think they should get committed. And so knowing where people are is super important, so you can actually communicate effectively with them, and then just being patient to know that hey, we're here. They're in denial. I'm not gonna try to get them committed today. I'm gonna try to get them to see that hey, this is an actual issue. That they're this is real, or whatever it might be. And so these stages of change are really important. Okay. Checking my time. Moving right along. Okay, so that's the tattoo method. The other part that we did the training on was actual, what we call common ground activism. And so the basic core of this is you attack the problem, not the person. The problem, not the person. And so before I get to this, let's go there. So it's really interesting. So I would train young activist movement leaders in different countries all around the world. in Common Ground Activism, and then I'll go to the US, and the US was like on fire. So it's a little bit, maybe cranked up a little bit now. And it's so interesting because a typical activism approach anywhere in the world is often very shame-based, where I'm going to shame you into behaving the way I think you should behave, or believing the thing I think you should believe. And what science shows us, with search work with countering violent extremists all over the world, is that when you shame people, you push them farther into extremism. So you're not actually pulling them in, you're pushing them farther and farther into extremism. And you can look at polarization in countries around the world and see this, just what science shows us. And so the cycle of violence is pretty darn simple. So just to the note on shaming, what we want to have eventually is instead of a pointed finger, an open hand. We're trying to we want to bring people in. And the problem with violence is, one, it's very simple, and it's very, very intuitive for us. Anyone that commits violence, we all have a justification for it. You can always find a justification for violence. We always, if we commit it, we feel completely justified. And the cycle is pretty simple. You hurt me, I hurt you, your people hurt my people hurt your people. We just continue. And it only stops when someone decides not to hurt in return. And those people that are angels that decide, instead of hurt, I'm going to actually try to help or heal, now you can actually start to see the beginnings of a reconciliation process. So reconciliation is an acknowledgement of pain and wrongdoing, but then you can start to see that you start breaking these cycles. And these cycles just continue and they spiral and they sometimes become generational. When it comes to a conflict situation, the world has told us that you have two choices. You either behave aggressively or passively. There's problems with both. So if you're in a conflict situation and you behave aggressively, the chances of retaliation is really high. They're gonna come back at you, most likely. But if you behave passively, then you're just promoting dominant behavior. You're gonna become a bystander and you could leave victims vulnerable. But there's so many options between behaving aggressively and passively. You could decide that I'm gonna protect the victim, I'm gonna prevent harm, I'm gonna make an ally, I'm gonna solve a problem. There's so many different things you could do, but we're often told that there's only fight or flight. And as we often say, fight or flight, neither of them get you out of your deep, dark pit. So 3 steps. First, so we say that as you can tell, we all know war pretty well, and so we're starting in our change. We start there. So there's 3 steps that we say for common ground activism. You strategize, you armor up, and you aim true. So strategize is set your objective. What are you trying to accomplish? Our whole lives, we've been taught in order to win, somebody has to lose. And what if that's not true? What if you shift your objective from I'm gonna make them lose to I'm gonna make them an ally, I'm gonna solve a problem, I'm gonna prevent harm? It completely changes the way that you treat people. So I could be in an argument with somebody, and I could call them a racist, and I could be right, and I could win that argument. Is that person any more likely to want to help me? Probably not. And the unfortunate thing is that's the person I need most, because I have an 8-year-old son. There'll be a young black teenager someday, and that's the person I need not to call the cops on suspicious activity when my son is just hanging outside his best friend's house waiting for him to get home. In order for my family to be safe, my husband, my kids, myself to be safe, those are the people that I actually need most. And it's hard because we were just having a conversation at one of the breaks about race-based stress. It's exhausting. And I don't expect it of everybody, but for me personally, I want to end racism, so I'm going to do what I need to do to have these conversations. So I try to put the objective right there. And so what we say is set your objective. And your objective is not to defeat them. The objective is, what are you trying to accomplish with them? Are you trying to get them to see you? Do you want them to have your back? You want them to understand you? What is your objective? And then also make sure you understand, in strategy, you gotta understand the problem. Understand it from your side, understand it from the other side. Do your research as well. So we say strategize. Second thing is armor up. So you have the power and control to decide how you react in a situation. And so I've often talked to teens about this. I'm like, you're not a blade of grass in the wind that you just blow wherever it goes. It's like you actually hold the power to decide what to do. Someone says something really mean to you, you have a decision to make. You don't have to hurt them in return. You don't have to say anything mean back. You could say, there's a lot of different things you can do. And so giving people that power back, that say like, it's both that sense of power that I can decide how I react, and then it's that resilience too, where things come in and it sucks, but like, I know my worth, I know my power, and I decide how I respond in situations. And then the final thing we say is aim true. So in strategy, you try to understand the problem, but also the person that you're talking to, or like what they actually care about. And you try to rise to the surface, like, okay, we're talking about, you know, gun violence or whatever, like, but like, do we both believe in safety and protection? And like, what is it that they actually care about? And so what you try to do is you focus on your shared interests, like, hey, we both want a safer world. And you start from a place of like, what are your shared values, or what values do they have, instead of your separate positions. And this is hard, and it does take humility, because I can tell you all the time, I'm number one, where it's like, oh no, I already know what they think and why they think it, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But really, I don't. I don't know what goes through their mind. I don't know what their experiences are. That's just me making assumptions. And so it takes a lot of humility to be like, hey, tell me, where are you coming from? Why are you coming from? Like, okay, I see why this is like, and then you can present it in a way. And then when people feel heard, you can also feel heard back. Okay, so that was a lot. You guys still with me? You with me? Okay, sweet. So you guys just got like a 3-day tattoo and activism training in like 25 minutes. So hopefully it sticks. Okay, so our mission, so Alicia and my mission was like, we're like, how do we scale common ground activism? Like, how do we like empower an entire generation with the skills to attack the problem, not the person, and make and build a better world together? And so we had a lot of failed attempts. We had a lot of failed assumptions, and I was gonna go through all of them, but like I said, we would be here till Friday. And so the major one, so we're just gonna focus on the major one. And so first we had this global campaign that we were gonna do, and then we did this gamified app, and it was called Battle for Humanity. And I think Battle for Humanity is actually when I met Celia. So it was this gamified app where you could go on and you could pick an activity that you want to do, and then you go do it, and it would automatically post online with a hashtag that connected you to everyone else around the world that was doing that same thing. And you got points for like the more that you did. So it was gamified, not a game, that you did. And so we had this basic assumption about, because we talked to young people all over, and we're like, man, there's so many young people that are passionate about all these different issues. Why don't more of them take action around the things that they care about? We said like, oh, if they care, then the only thing that's stopping them is that they just don't know what to do. So if we give them things to do, they'll do it, right? No, it's not true. And it was really interesting, because with Battle for Humanity, we could see players or audience users, I guess, sign up and say, I want to change the world. And then only 1% of them would actually do anything in the real world. And we're like, okay, what is stopping them? What is that barrier that's keeping them from doing this? And what we found is it actually came down to self-efficacy. So self-efficacy is your belief in your ability to accomplish a goal. And social cognitive theory says it's the #1 indicator whether someone will take action or not. Is if they actually believe they can accomplish that thing. And so a lot of us are passionate about a lot of things, but feel very helpless or powerless to do anything about those things. Whether it's things in our own life, like around loneliness, or if it's things that you care about in the world, you're like, well, I'm not gonna like move the needle on this issue that I care about. And so very few people will ever go about and do it. And what we found with Battle for Humanity is players kept asking us for practice. They wanted to be able to practice dealing with people and difference in these situations before being thrown out into the real world to do them. And so our solution is really twofold. And it's with story and gameplay. And so story, it's like, I'm back, baby. I love a good story. Like, story is how I started. And stories are so powerful because behavior change doesn't happen by giving people information. Unfortunately, it happens through experiences. And stories can be a really powerful way that you can experience somebody else's life or child's that you would never get a chance to experience. But it's a vicarious experience. So with interactive stories, you are the main character, you get to make decisions, and then you experience the consequences of your decisions in a really safe place. So this is why I think it's like the next evolution of media-based behavior change. Super exciting. And then we look at gameplay. So as you all know, games are the #1 form of entertainment and leisure activity for Gen Alpha and Gen Z. And I think one of the reasons why is because in a generation that is dealing with loneliness and social anxiety and all these things, you can come to games and feel really powerful within the world. As we know, games are built with a core game loop. Every time you go around the loop, you get a little bit better, and what's happening is you're getting mastery. And mastery is how people and kids start to believe in themselves. Not when we tell them they're great, or we give them a trophy, but they actually become a master at something. And so I was an athlete, did a lot of reps, but same thing with gameplay. And so you have players playing, spending all the hours, they're getting that feedback, they're doing well, they're leveling up, they're getting really powerful within the game, and then they stop playing, and reality comes crashing back down. And so we asked ourselves, could we build a game where all the power they gained within the game, they actually got to keep with them? So they became more confident in their abilities and their strengths, their relationships start to improve, and then they actually go out and do the thing. They build a better world. And so that's the idea and the magic behind World Reborn. We're into Act 2. I promise it won't be as long. Okay. So, World Reborn. Do I hit the button? Do I click on the thing? Oh, look, it's moving. Is it moving for you? Yep. Okay, cool. I didn't even do anything. Okay. So, World Reborn, as I said before, it's an interactive story game with real-world quests. So the premise is that there's this cataclysmic event that's fractured the world to multiple realities, and there's a secret underground group that's recruited you because they need you to save this other reality that only you can save, and join the rest of us to save this reality. And so I'm actually like repping the shirt. So it's called, the underground group is called Riders Reborn. You can't see it, but these are mug shots of what used to be Freedom Riders in the segregated South in the US. They're basically white and black activists that had each other's back in the segregated South. So they would sit in buses together, and they would sit in restaurants together, and they would get arrested all the time, and they're nonviolent, and they have all these mugshots, and they're badass. And that's the kind of spirit that we want to bring it back, is that we protect others no matter how different they are, and we protect others without hurting anyone. And so that's the spirit of a writer that's like recruiting you into the game. And then you have to, okay, I'll get to that. Yeah, so basically you have to save this, you spend your energy trying to save this other reality, which basically takes place in this futuristic institute. It's like Game of Thrones meets Euphoria. There's all these different factions, and you have to solve the mystery, save the world before it's too late for everyone. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. And here on the show, like, this is the logic of our world. So, like, you guys, like, this is like top secret stuff that we're showing you that our players have no idea about. So basically, how we built the logic of our game and our game design reflects how conflict actually works in the real world. So all that stuff I just lectured you on. And so player or person, so they're coming across a choice, and they have a choice. They have a choice and they have a choice. Yep, good job, just words. Okay, so they can choose to hurt, something bad happens or conflict happens, they can choose to hurt. And when you choose to hurt, there's this thing called rot, and in the game, you're the only one that can see it within the within pathways. And then as the rot grows, it affects the community and like what happens within the world it affects. Or you can choose to do nothing, and then nothing happens. Or you could choose in a conflict situation to do a helpful situation. And in that, what you do is basically, there's these, so there's these sparks. There's these sparks of possibilities called wild sparks, and they're neutral within the game. So first, they're neutral. You spin them as they're like a resource. What the player doesn't know yet, which is what you guys now know, is that any player, whether it's an actual player, NPC, whenever they choose to hurt, the wild sparks, who are neutral and full of possibilities, turn destructive. But if they choose to help, those wild sparks are infused with a human strength. And we have 5 different human strengths, and they can help. And not only can they help, but they can also transform the rot. Just like in real life, where we can actually transform bad conflict and make something good come out of it, it's the same thing. And you influence the world by like how that goes. So, okay. So basically, you spend your energy making choices, save the other reality. The only way that you can get energy is by doing stuff, small things that feed your soul. So either help your own mental health, or help others, or the planet. And they are brought to you by real-world changemakers. So this is Natalie. She is a Twitch streamer, Mayhem Mermaid. And so she talks about everything that she's gone through with mental health. And so she's your guide. And you basically play her interactive story to get more energy. So every mod, we call them training mods, features a real-world creator. We have inner city Boston kids. We have a WNBA star and like esports owner. Like we have a military veteran. Like we feature a lot of different faces, and we'll continue to feature more and more faces. And each one tells a little bit of their interactive story. And so, for example, so people are like, what are these stories? So, for example, imagine it's an anti-bullying mod. The first step might be, hey, think of those around you. Who's often bullied or marginalized and people that you pass by in your daily life? At school or at work, write them in your private log. You get energy for that. Continue the main campaign. Next time you run out of energy, we ask you, all right, remember that person you mentioned? What's something kind you could say to them that would make them feel seen? You write it in your private log, you get energy for that. Final step is, okay, go leave an anonymous note of encouragement for that person. And that's when you like earn what we call the ally assist card when you come next, and you get a ton of energy to continue and helps level you up within the game. But we also, because we are a venture-backed studio, so we also have brands help us, and they can sponsor real-world mods as well. And so we've been talking to Ulta Beauty, it's a retail store who just invested in us, about doing stuff around women's shelters. So the first step is like, learn why we need women's shelters. And we've integrated socials into the game. So you get extra bonus points for sharing with the things that you learned online on your socials after. The next step is, where's your local women's shelter? So enter the address and the hours, you get energy. The next step, we might have you call them. Final step, go create a goodie bag for your local women's shelter. And if you do it at Ulta, who is the sponsors, you get double the loyalty points, and you get real-world awards for every step you take along the way. And if it's appropriate for those final steps, we have you take a TikTok-style video or photo, eventually geolocation to prove that you did that thing in real life, and helps you earn real-world rewards. And then also, while you're playing, we have, so there's all these different kind of mechanics within the game, choice-based game. We're currently adding our trust system, which is really cool because, hot tip, instead of behaving and making choices in a way to try to get people to like you, Make choices and behave in a way to get people to trust you. That's how you build really strong relationships. And so in a lot of games, there's a lot like, oh, I'm just gonna like compliment and like charm these people, and like my crush is gonna like me. But that actually leads to pretty superficial relationships and not being honest. And what's better is like if you have the objective in mind, it's like I'm gonna behave in a way to get people to build trust. It changes how you behave, and you're rewarded for that within the game. Because in the game, you're gonna actually need them. So if you have low trust with certain people, you're gonna have a hard time getting the information and the things that you need in order to succeed. Okay, so training mods. This is where we feature the real world people. You can see Chris and Kimberly here. And it's part of when you finish each trainer's mod, you get an ally assist card. And so they can help you within the game. This is another example of what these training mods look like. And so I just geek out because this is my son Landon, the little one. And our good family friend AJ, they're featured in here. And so AJ is a teenager. He struggled with reading. We had a mod in our game that was really focused around young girls in sports because they're falling behind boys, and there's all these benefits. And so we also wanted to have balance, so we had one around how young boys are falling behind girls in education and why that is. And so AJ shares his story of struggle with the goal to like how you can volunteer your time with a young boy in your life and what you can do to help him. And so the first step is you learn about disparity between boys and girls in education around literacy. The next step is we help you choose a young boy in your life, and you ask him to tell you a story about himself or about a world. This picture is so cute. Third step is that whatever the little boy tells you, you turn that story into a creative work. So you make a book, you draw a picture, you write a song or a comic book, whatever it is, and then you share that work with your kiddo and you read it together. So you have this like core positive memory you create together with reading and writing that hopefully sticks with them. And so we did this at the tail end of our teaser launch. We put the game out in the US for a limited amount of time to see how it did. And so it was really amazing because we had players do this. We had about 19. There wasn't a lot of time to complete it because there was like a couple weeks left of the teaser launch, but we still had almost 20% of our players complete the full mod, so do this with a kid. And then they also did the real world activity of sharing it on social media as well. So it's a nice UGC. We're hoping that it leads to also K factor, but sharing what they learn and making more impact. So the other really cool thing about my other half that is not here, Alicia, is that Alicia is a behavioral science researcher. And so what we ended up doing is we integrated positive psychology into the game. And so there's something that's been studied in positive psychology called the 24 character strengths. And Alicia, in her brilliance, it's basically like a factor analysis. I think she's gonna squint at me because that's not right. But basically did a meta study and saw that there's these 24 character strengths, but they tend to group in people in 5 major ways. And so if you tend to be high in social intelligence, you also tend to be high in leadership and bravery. If you tend to be high in curiosity, you also tend to have a love of learning and an openness. If you tend to be high in humility, also like kindness and things like that. And so we have in our game mapped out the 24, so each choice, well not every choice, but most choices are mapped out with the 24 character strengths, and as you play, it sorts you on where your strengths lie. And this is really important because strength-based interventions are really helpful for well-being, and it leads to long-term increase in happiness and acts as a buffer. So it helps protect you from anxiety and depression when you know. So we basically help you identify your strengths and then help you use the unique strengths that you have to better your reality. And the message to young people is that actually they are already strong. So there is something about you, there's something about them that is already strong and special and the world needs. And we want to make sure that they know that, and the game helps surface that. And so this is our general progression loop within the training, you get depending on like the choices you make within the fantasy world, it helps sort you, and then it helps you sort you even more in the actions that you choose to do. Because we don't necessarily nail you down to you have to do it this way. We give you lots of options, lots of prompts that allow you to kind of choose, and then it helps show where your strengths are. And then those groupings, it's like a whole algorithm. I'm so impressed with them, like how this all comes together. And so you have your 5, it will sort you into your 5 core strengths. This is like, so you have to play 7 days, so we do have a little retention mechanic there. But we also need the data to see like where you are. 7 days reveals what your core strength is. And then each of these core strengths also has a list of what the 24 character strengths are underneath it. But it's but they all have cooler names than, you know, whatever it is on the thing. So I'm a hardcore Zal writer, so Kitzal. And so my core strength really is around like hope and optimism and spirituality. And you can see that like, so like believer is spirituality, ride or die is love. So that exists in 2 categories, in both agape, which is like kindness and selflessness and love. And within the Zal group, F it, we grateful. So gratitude is also part of it. And so each player is sorted for where their core strength is, and so that they have this community and group with others. But you also get your top 3 rider traits. And so I also have galaxy braining in there, which is creativity, which is not part of the grouping, but it's one of the unique traits one of the traits I have. And then within the game, so we basically have a role. So there's certain choices that you make where if you have a high level of that core strength, you'll have a higher chance of actually winning that role within the game. So it's just one example of how we use it now. We also plan to add a lot more of it into our meta loop. So along with this like rot, like the destructive rot, there's certain types of rot that certain strengths are better at defeating than others, and we'll tie it to reality. So curiosity is a great way to overcome fear, because we often fear things that we're unfamiliar with. Gratitude is a great way to overcome rage, you know, so there will be certain types of rot that also have their unique names and certain strengths that are better at defeating different types of rot. How am I doing? I have 5 minutes to give us 10 minutes of questions. Okay, impact, I'll speed through it. So one of the cool things about what we've built, and goes back to the transformational stages of change, is that we're actually starting in denial. So we're not in denial, sorry. Our players often start in denial. What that means is that most personal growth type of apps, they usually start where the player already believes that they have a problem that needs to change. We can start before that, which is really exciting, and that's how we've developed it. And so almost every one of our training mods starts with the assumption that our players are in denial, and so we can move up and actually start to really shift attitudes and behavior. And so this is our behavior change model. This shows basically how the part that the interactive story is actually a huge component of what we do and being able to practice, dealing with people and situations and things. And then it also overlaps with the real world task, because we've built the real world mods to be very incremental. So it starts with like, oh, you start like thinking about it, and then you start like journaling, how does this apply to me? And then we get you closer and closer to doing something in real life. And so this is the breakdown of how the behavioral change model works. So belief is like, oh, I actually have the option to do things differently. I'm not tied into just fight or flight. Like I have all these options that I have, and that I'm the kind of person that would do this in this kind of way. So beliefs towards attitude, perceived norms, and self-efficacy. So doing this would feel right. Other people would like or celebrate me for doing this differently. I'm confident I can do this differently. Intention to take action. I decided that I'm going to do this differently. And then action. Yeah, I did it. And what we found is in our teaser launch, the response to the game was just absolutely incredible. We had players telling us that the game was healing them, that the game was changing how they show up in the world, that was revealing things about themselves that had made it an important tool in their life. 97% of players surveyed said that the mods made them feel good, and 84% said that the mods inspired them. So this is some of the fan art and Discord from the game. And so one of my favorites is this one in the corner over here. And so this is a player, because we don't have an avatar in the game yet, and this is a player who drew herself, discovering that she had the agape power. And so just love it. And then they're also talking about, like, they had all these goofy things within the Discord of, like, the Ubus coming together and, like, all that kind of stuff. So, and then we also saw impact for value in people actually doing the steps. We had 25,000 steps completed. We had over 7,000 players opt in to write notes to hospitalized kids, which I'll show you in a second. But there also, we had players engaging in uplifting women in sports, practicing engaging across dividing lines, learning about misinformation, volunteering with kids online, saving the crisis line center info to their phones so they could help them or their friends. And then some of these are the social posts that happened. So players learned about misinformation and then would share stats on their socials and tag the trainer or the creator in it, so the creator could then see it and then share it. So we created this nice little distribution flywheel. And then I'm going to just read you one of the notes from the kids, because it's just, or one of the notes for the kids. And so in the beginning of our game, you hear about Jade and how she survived a double lung transplant, and she gives you the opportunity to pick a note to send to a hospitalized kid to boost their spirits, or you can write your own. 54% of our players opted to write their own, and this is just one of the messages. It says, "Hi, I'm Abby. I'm from Maine. I wanted to tell you that your fighting inspires me daily, as I'm watching my dad fight too. Someday I'll get into nursing so I can do more than write you a message, because you deserve to be surrounded by the biggest hearts and the most love. Never give up. This world loves you and wants to see you succeed." So we have over 7,000 of these. Literally the person, like someone on our team that was going through it was just like bawling of like, this was in like 5 minutes of gameplay. People were inspired to like pour love and support to kids that they never met before in their life. And then we're up on time, so I just wanted to like, so these are some of the other things that we've basically learned, that we're able to track, World Reborn tracks and rewards players, and so we're able to help with physical health, well-being, and decisions to build on strength. So, and these are just some of the quotes that we see from players saying that, like, how much it meant for them to actually be able to see their personality and what their strengths were. This idea of loneliness and building relationships and how important it is. And really meeting young people where they are, and so more quotes there. And then just in general polarization and how it affects all of us, and just really having the tools to be able to handle the tough world out there. And finally say that a lot of people told us that a game that does this much good or is so impacty would feel like broccoli. And so I just wanted to share some of the reviews. The players that they loved it. They felt it was fun. They felt good. They loved the art. They loved the story. And the training mods were one of their favorite pieces within the game because it made them feel good and powerful. Okay, that's it.
Amazing. Yeah, the power of community and, peace building is really important. And that's why, having this community is really important. So thank you again for being here. All right, let's go through the questions. We have an upvoted question, like super a popular one. Does it happen that players develop manipulative tendencies or spam superficial comments just to earn rewards? Are there any guardrails in place for that?
This is always the first question that game designers ask. Yeah, it's really interesting. So my co-founder and I have this theory that like even just getting exposed to some of these things is okay. Even so, we're not really hardcore in policing the little steps along the way. To complete the final step of the game, we are requiring some proof, but even that is not, we're not policing that in a really hard way yet. We do plan to have that be more of a community thing. So in order to win the big rewards that actually level you up and give you all the real world rewards and the rewards within the community, that you share the thing that you did in real life so the community can like approve it. That's a long-term goal when we have money to build that full thing out. But right now, we're more concerned with players having the experience. And so even just click-throughing it and not doing the thing yet, they still actually have had it. They still were touched by it. And we've actually seen in our surveys that there's players that have told us, like, in the beginning, I wasn't really doing the thing. But, like, over time, I felt more and more confident. And now I'm, like, journaling and doing all the thing. We're like, yes, exactly. So we try really hard not to punish. We don't have, every once in a while we will get like a bad note in the in the thing, but we screen all the notes that go to kids, and so like it's like 99.9% of them are just beautiful and amazing, but we screen them. And so we will be adding more community layer to the game as we go forward, and so we're looking about how to do that in a really healthy way, looking at emojis, other things like, but yeah, but we're more concerned with players getting exposure to it rather than punishment or coming down on them. So if that makes, I don't know if I answered that well. It's kind of a roundabout, but yes.
How do you address common ground change for groups in which there are major power differential and reconciliation is blocked by the oppressor?
I'm like, well. No, it's really interesting because I feel like I've had the benefit of knowing several extremists that have, and people that have changed. So I know I have friends that are former white supremacists, neo-Nazis, all the way to far left. And the important thing is that we have to figure out how to engage people that have the power and are, quote, the oppressors. And this, I believe this approach is the best way to do it. Because, and this is why we look at the writers. This is why the writers were so powerful, because it wasn't just black people sitting in white section and getting beat up. They had white people that had the power, like they were the ones that had their back and were there with them. And so we have way more power than we believe, and it's important to know where your power lies. And this is why it's so important to have, to look at ways to like actually bring people in. When George Floyd was murdered, I wrote a piece that was called, it was like, I'm black, I'm a peace builder, I need your help. And it was really hard, like when that whole situation happened, it was really hard because I didn't feel like being a peace builder when that happened. I was traumatized with the rest of the black community, and I was angry, and I was pissed off. And I know that in order for reconciliation to happen, there has to be acknowledgement of pain and wrongdoing. And that acknowledgement was not happening. It was like, oh, you shouldn't have struggled. Oh, you shouldn't have been here. Like, so all these things, but acknowledging the pain that happened. And it's hard because we just cycle each other, right? So it's like someone says something insensitive, and then I'm like, you asshole. Like, you know, and then they're like, see, this is why I can't. And that whole experience was an amazing learning experience for me and what made me really believe in this, because during that time, I had so many white people, conservative people, reach out to me to talk and ask questions, and they felt safe to do that. And so I have people that I grew up with in my small hometown. I had an old man from my church call me and ask to get coffee because he didn't understand. His family felt like he was being racist, and he just didn't understand, like, and he wanted to sit down and have those conversations. And so it's not easy, it takes time, but we sat down, we talked for 3 hours, and his whole perspective changed. And so I believe, because otherwise, what is our other option? Like, we're not Thanos. We can't just snap our fingers and have everybody that we disagree with disappear. I often talk about it. So I was a volleyball player, and it's like, in volleyball, you like get all excited, you look on the other side of the net, you play the other team, you beat them, you lose, whatever, you get to go home in your separate buses. Like, there is no separate buses. Like, we're all together, we have to live with each other. And what happens is, since I can't snap my fingers and make everybody disappear, what then happens? Do we have to kill them off? Like, what is the solution to how we live together? And then it's like, we wonder how we get to genocide. And it's like, and like, you'll see it in like patterns of genocide, where it's like people have rose up against the oppressors sometimes in certain situations, and like, this is what happens. And so this is another really long answer, but I truly believe that we need each other if we want a healthier and safer society, and that we need to bring groups of people in that have different levels of power. And the last thing I'll say on this, I promise, is there's something that we look at peacebuilding called contact theory. And what we found is that people helping someone that they consider below them doesn't transform or change them in any way. Charity does not transform people. When you put people and you put them in the same space and you tell them that they're equal partners and they have to achieve something together, and you put them on the equal, like, that's when we actually start seeing transformation within groups of people. And so it's both of like, so like creating more situations where people have to collaborate, and the person that's considered holding the power is brought eye to eye until this person has equal power with you, and raising up other people that have been oppressed so that they can co-create things together is extremely powerful. And we need to create more situations where we can activate that. Okay, now I'm done. I'm sorry.
A great answer. Wait. I want to ask one last question. Like, what can we do in our games to help support and share the message of common ground?
Ooh, I love it. This is why we did the whole thing. Yes, I mean, I think, so this is, no one's ever asked me this before. I think what would be really great, what I notice a lot happening, and even what's hard for our own writers, is the realities of like how conflict work doesn't play out in entertainment. And so the bully says something, you shut them down, and like that feels great. And in reality, what happens is you shut them down, you have immediate relief, people celebrate you in that moment. That person goes off and they're gonna figure out how to destroy you and make sure like you have made like an enemy for life. And so there is nuance. And so I think just like, not just doing the simple thing of like, oh yeah, this is how it worked, and rewarding players for doing behavior that's really what we would call adversarial behavior, and continue to reward players for doing that. And it's not like you have to punish players, but just like show the realities of what happens. And that's what we try to do in our game, is like short-term benefits, long-term benefits. Sometimes the short-term benefit sucks to like, you know, like sometimes it does, but being able to, but always rewarding adversarial behavior over other behavior that's more collaborative or innovative or whatever. I would just say like, look at all, there's more than just fight or flight, and just like expanding your creativity and your innovation and giving players lots of different options of what to do in different situations, and then actually playing out what would happen if they do that thing on the short term and the long term could be really awesome and cool.
And I'm going to end with this anonymous comment. Holy shit, great talk. Thank you, Jess.